Lama Chöpa, Lama Chökyi Gyaltsen, Rinpoche kissing on that, then ma and Kuno Jamdochi, Kuno Chanchu Simki Kunela, then they give you the cave, sa tap, then Sat up Chen, Jamdochi, and Lama like you, Sanji like you, on the Jamdochi, and then Chanchu Simja Tamje. Danda San Yokoban Tobrachi is Chanchu Semge, and the Maze, and the Cetela, and the Newa, Cetela, and San Yokoban Tobrachi in Sepege, Chanchu Semgecom. The Negi Gomne, and the Neocombe Gabla, then Gabuil, Chichilia, Tim Jedin, Gabuil had a Sosolia, Tim Mevaje, the Ne Ajik Sosra, and Dombani Sam Daje, Don Yocom. Then don't buy to Lodi, Dorje, and to get hay or ye. Then a gully was a bottom of our church, and then knew that Judy, and then take it laugh. Love songs and picket them by the Dustin some daddy kissing on the daddy, kissing Chishu Sour daddy.
Good evening. So, the last couple of weeks we've started to look at the Lama Chöpa, the Guru Puja, and we've now covered the preliminaries. So when one starts the practice, one already is sitting down with a motivation of refuge and bodhicitta. So with such a motivation already cultivated, one develops the visualization that was presented. Having generated the visualization, feeling the presence of one's Lama, who's indivisible from the Buddha and Yidam, one then intentionally cultivates the motivation of refuge and bodhicitta. And these were the verses we looked at, verses 2 to 6. Having strengthened our motivation of refuge and bodhicitta, we then dissolve the visualization into ourselves. And, I've got ahead of myself, sorry. So we're having generated refuge and bodhicitta, which includes, as we saw in the 5th verse, where it was mentioned that one's determination is to become a Buddha as quickly as possible for the sake of others. In fact, in this very life, and not even over one's entire lifespan, but within a retreat period. One then recites the reverse with the understanding, I shall quickly in this very life attain the state of a primordial Guru Yidam Buddha. So then one dissolves, having generated refuge and bodhicitta, one dissolves the visualization into oneself, and then arises as one's Guru Yidam. And last week it was mentioned what the meaning of that is as well. And then one visualizes as emanating light rays, blessing the world and its beings, and so forth. So this then covers the preliminary to the main practice. And now we come to the next part, which is to look at the blessing of offerings. So we'll look at that and then move on to the generation of the merit field.
Chipombuina, Lamena, Nangla, Denu Shubena, and the Shelal Denu Shubena, Puye, Shelati, Padri, Chazan, Jene, then to Denu Denu, Purmado, Pesana, then Shinia, Kalada, this Tibetan, Topsitan, Yopchika, Kalazo, Chitane, Digo Marwa, Dinashi, Tambone, Kala, Soyana, Chazan, Jesha, then Denu, Denia, Puyarwa, Puyatic, and Dinashi, and Diruade. Yasan to get Kiakar Tushin sit down, you get the Kiakar number the Shazan and the Diriche or New Year, and the part in some of the Ninju, Shazan Diriche, the Kiakar part, Yetaji Dimba, and Kiakata number Jehovah, Dinashi, Tisan Mohomban Chelia, and Sojin Sat Tapche, Sojinle, Puyi, Chopati, Puyelia, that then Sojin Samatam Yen and Chopati party Riche, then Jingi Lapche, Pasha, then Sojin Sat up, then Jella Puyi, the name Zada, Dambo, that in the Chopa Nacho, Chuse, Jingi Lapia to get it my shoe.
So think a little bit about the order of the outline. We started with the preliminaries, which is the generation of refuge and bodhicitta. Then, just before coming to, as we see in the outline on page 3, the core of the practice, which starts with the generation of the merit field, we have this prior section, verses 7 and 8, the blessing, the inner offering. Or more accurately, we could say blessing of the inner offering and offering substances. So why is there this blessing of offerings between the preliminaries and the core of the practice? Well, when one is generating the merit field and then embarking on the varying practices that follow, that is the main activity. So let's say you're having important guests coming over. Before your guests arrive, you'll be preparing. You'll be preparing your home and if you're going to offer them a meal, preparing the meal. You won't wait for your guests to come and greet them at the door and then take them through to the lounge and leave them there while you go to the kitchen. All that preparation is done prior. So that is what's happening in verses 7 and 8, where one is doing the preparation for the offerings that are to be made to the merit field. You will have experience in your own life, for example, when celebrating a birthday party. The preparation is always done well in advance of the guests arriving. First the planning, then the preparing. And when the guests come, everything is ready so that you can show appropriate gratitude to the person whose birthday it is. So this we can understand now in a similar way.
나들이야 초피에들이야 낭쉐세지다 취제세데 어두스네 되나니리고래 네인자 당아주겐 다 지나 낭쉐기 진일라비에 진납제 되게 직제 아니 디체라 아니 취제 진일라비에 되게 돼야데 직 개버라지네 되니게 가 대선이리게.
So there are two, maybe we can say primary functions here, which would be clearer in a more expansive text. But here there are two parts. The one is relating to the inner offering, and the other is relating to offering substances. And of the two, first one embarks on blessing the inner offering, and thereafter blessing of the offering substances. And the blessing of both the inner offering and offering substances are in our text done in a very brief manner. In the 7th verse, Om Ahung. That recitation serves to bless the inner offering and the offering substances.
Om Ahung la du Om se du ku se or a se sung se hung se tuk che ku sung tu sum gi jingila go re je da ku sung tu sum gi jingila go re je.
And Om Ahum represents the body, speech, and mind being blessed.
And of
now, as ordinary people, we don't have the capacity to actually engage in blessings. So we need to then bear in mind the context, which was first one meditates on refuge, bodhicitta, and cultivates the wisdom realizing emptiness. Having generated these minds within oneself, we then arose as the deity, as Yamantaka. So now it's as Yamantaka we are suitable to bless the inner offering and the offering substances.
Dan nangchö jinyi lapzin chözi jinyi la sayadi dan nangchö sayadi le na jugi jike 동어로 코어로 시작으로 지산들이야 먼저 라미치 소부대 창구 그래 고구마를 써야다 지지 가르친 디그리 써야 되지 여러 와다 되네자 근데 저기 같이래 뭐 창지면하다 신도 호지나다 자상신나다 같이 되니시피네 저기 될야 진일랍데 디즈용어 교워다 가지 진일랍제 진일랍데 디즈용어 다가서 파바 넘규가 미규만 하신 비슷하면 봐 창이나데 자상의 신도 호에나 가리네 곧 미규가 넘긴 미규미 비슷하면 봐죠 데 디즈용어데 디즈용어 교와시 빼면서 되니게 용어 교 엄마원시 비 진일랍데 디즈용어 교고 그래제 당아서 디다다 엄마라데 디즈용어 뉴에 매바 지기를 마당한서 디즈용어 교 투고 말와다 다음에 똑바토 얘기 그런 지기네 디즈용어 교 투고 와다디.
The offering is done by ourselves, having arisen as Yamantaka, and so, because as Yamantaka, we can engage in the blessings. However, being realistic, we are only engaging in these blessings on a level of aspiration. Those who actually have siddhis or attainments, they can transform substances. For us, we're still engaging in the practice on a level of aspiration. And the substances that are blessed here would be, for example, in our puja, we'd usually have a small quantity of alcohol. And it doesn't mean, though, that one necessarily has to use alcohol. One is utilizing what is commonly available in society. So one could use alcohol or fruit juice or black tea. Whatever the substance is, the process is the same. Through the recitation of Om Mahong, as a deity, one blesses the offering substances.
And chooses a delay to get it, that Chopa gets here, Bendigo to get in Meadow, Dube, Miami, Atisha, she has a Romala soba. Just a treasure, just an energy, and they got them two down, Baden, senior down, two down, by then, it's the Tasha do a dinner. By then, it's pretty much Tasha do. Pretty much do a Tibetan. There's a by then, already. The treasure, Chopa gets here, treasure, Meadow, Dube, Miami, Atisha, she has a Romo, and the do. Do Puja Yorwa do ne Baden, the senior, and the China, that Tamala Denigate Zebiki, Yidu, you just Chopa gets there. The nigga not so you, but the Chezes or Chopa gets there. Chezel and the Chopuyagi, Jaladi is order. Zel and the Jalala Guru, Chopuyaki, Jaladi is order. Yeah,
I didn't say one part so clearly. That's the translator. So the alcohol that has been blessed, that is there as the inner offering, not offering substances. So it's an offering substance, but it's specific to the inner offering. Now one blesses as well offering substances. So the alcohol specifically referred to the inner offering. And offering substances then are a wide variety of offering substances, such as flowers, incense, butter lamps, and other things such as, we don't have here, but sometimes there's a parasol, or there's the parasol over there, and I have no idea what it's called, what's hanging on the wall there next to the Heart Sutra. So whatever that's called. Victory banner, there we go. So the victory banner there. So these and others would be included here in offering substances that one also blesses.
That is it. That in it, that Jinila gets it. That Delia more Ganishore said, the Sumli, that more said in Nature, say more Ganishore. That is to get Jele Carriores, Laka Carrichor says, and the Manung Roshi Carriore said, the Sumro, there's a Sumro she more she wore that in Ma. More she. ngō gāna siyōre sāyā, kōrōngi lēgā jēlē rūchī kāra yōre sāyā, anī jēlē dīndi ngō dīndi shirē, anī kōrōngi lēgā jēlē dīndi shirē, pāndō rō mā sōne, pāndō dīndi siyōre sāyā, anī māngyū dīndi siyōre sāyā, shē dīli yā, dā dīndi mā shūyā rī dā.
We look at this now in terms of 3 parts, one being the essence, the other being either activity or benefit, that's the second, and the third being the quantity.
다들 막 ngō yīshē 칙디디 ngō yīshē 넘버는 나주에다 최제 소소의 넘버 제례 원부 주기 주율로 대동기 이제 개발된 개비의 사당 바나 남기 현남지 용소 캡이 친한 사회 주진 담지 전제 섬기 미개비 강화 교로 사지.
This then is the 8th verse. Just to say before I read it, for this particular verse, the order of the Tibetan and English is very mixed. So as Genla comments, it may not be quite in the same order as we have. Pure clouds of outer, inner, and secret offerings and fields of visions pervade the reaches of space, earth, and sky, spreading out inconceivably in essence, wisdom, knowledge, in inner aspects, inner offerings, and various offering substances. As enjoyments of the 6 senses, they function to generate the special wisdom knowledge of bliss and emptiness.
단 대신 아주 최후에게 나주에다 제세저와 어디 이시에 남바래서 이시에라 이시에서 동방이도 그러래서 제가 되네서 당보 되니기 최바 진일에 당보 동방이 삼당 거래다 동방이 공고 거래 동방이 검체 동방이 또 별로디 아니 파 동방 안에 동방이 또 별로디 아니 어디 동방이 또 별로 임바질이야 남바로 지나도 나야라 그러지데 파 미를 통해 나야 되라 나초시 벤 나초시 임바 직제 되네 나초를 삼다외네 나초 삼다외네 어디 동방이 또 비시래데 이내가 줄 미를 나도 남바디 그래서 나초기 남바로 지어 봐지 나디 나신 최제디게 이내야 아주 어디 동방이 또 별로 임바라 반 남바디 아니 최제 소소기 제 소소 임바지 어디네 지 이거 동거로 봐. 동방이 또 별로래. 다 동방이 가서 동방이 검제 동방이 또 별로디 오지 임바질이야. 디 나용도 갑라 안에 가서네 미리 통도 추중오 대추이 창에나 제나 되니게 나추기 나바로 통구요 봐마도 돈다 오마 동방이 또 별로래. 다가서 동방이 또 별로시. 디나신 제데 메도도 바마메 지자 셰저 로마 같이 여바나 디차상 당봉아도 동방이 또 동변 안에 두고 걸어왔다. 대서 동방이 또 별로 임바지라 남바디 메도게 나바카시 메도게 나바카시 뿌이게 나바카시 메 말미게 나바도 나마도 돈다디 동방이 또 걸어래서 그러다. 뭐 이셰라 세데 뭐시도 뭐디 동방이 또 걸어래서. 지자 남바 된 나초에다 쉬쉬 소소 남바 제레서 베네디로 아주 이게 소식이 매도 망고도와 세상에서 동도 매도랑 통고 능고라 이내 돈다 이그레 매도원에 말와 이그레와 나야라 매도 능고 이내 돈다 뭐라 이그레로와 지사 뭐 이그레 나야라 매도 능고로와 디나시레 고 데니게 아주 동반이 곰베 돈에 데네 나추게 남바 바시도 어디 고 동반이 또 별로 임발라 남바 나야디 나추게 남바 나되게 데네 오 동반이 또 별로 임바질라 남바디 메도게 남바다 뿌이게 남바다 데네 안에제 셰세다 로마라 소바 데네 차상 데네 남바 미러 남바 샤르게 데니게 지자 나추에다 추제디게 차상 어디 가서 동반이 또 비시기 해서
Of the 3 parts we're going to look at, the essence, the activity or function, and quantity, looking then at the first, essence. So for us in English, this is where the Tibetan starts with essence in the first line. For us, though, it's in our 3rd line. In essence, wisdom, knowledge. In aspect, inner offerings and various offering substances. So what this means then is that what appears to our eyes is, in terms of the inner offering, will be that substance, for example, such as alcohol. This is what appears to one's eyes, but its essence is the wisdom realizing emptiness. Similarly, with the various offering substances, such as flowers and incense and victory banner and the parasol, these, from the wisdom, with the essence of the essence being the wisdom realizing emptiness, with such an essence, it arises in the aspect of whichever offering substance comes to mind. So one will see, for example, the flower. So this is the appearance that the offering substance takes, but its essence is the wisdom realizing emptiness. An illustration then that we may be more familiar with is we look at these flowers here. What do we see? We see flowers, but their essence is plastic. So to our mind, flowers appear, but their essence or their entity is plastic. So similarly, with the offering substances that appear to our mind, or the inner offering that appears to our mind, it has an appearance of alcohol or flowers or incense and so forth, but its essence is the wisdom that is realizing emptiness.
Dine inzang susurana dangbo tongpanyi samda tongpanyi kom, dine susurana ki tongpanyi togo lodi, daya an choshin le puya ki nangchu yungo namba gyursonga samba meba chaya da. Dine tongpanyi togo lodi, da chose ki medo da dupe da, da mara ki dine ki namba gyurson sambi meba chaya da, meba chaya dire. Tongpanyi togo lodi, jisan tongpanyi togo dangbo susurana tongpanyi kom, jisan susurana tongpanyi samda tongpanyi togo lodi, ane na puya ki nachu yungo gyurson sambi, namba nachu yungo namba ngo gyurson sambi meba chaya da. Dine sosu tongpanyi kom, tongpanyi tobe lodi, ne chozi ki sosu ki, chozi sosu namba, ngo dine ki gyurson sambi meba chaya dire.
So the essence of the inner offering and the offering substances is not just or merely emptiness. In fact, it's not that. It is rather our wisdom that is realizing emptiness. So here in the sadhana thus far, we've already meditated on refuge, bodhicitta, and emptiness. And we then arose as the deity. Now our wisdom that is realizing emptiness arises in the aspect or the form, in the aspect of the inner offering and in the aspect of the various offering substances. So when it's said that the essence is the wisdom realizing emptiness, this isn't something in general, it is our wisdom that is realizing emptiness arises as the offering substance.
다 되네 남바체 다 제레 가려선 제레 원보 주기 주일로 대동기 시켜봐진 예배시오라 지산 제레 가려서는 대수기 영화도 원보 주고 미기 원보 미기네 안에 미기 나와 나 제류 이세 주거로와 지산 땅을 주기 가려용 거로서는 낭쉐디에 가르쳐서는 주기 제일 반용고로와 녀야다 원보 주기 주일에서도 가리통 원보 주기 주일에서 통야이래서 매도다 매도되게 갈 미기 통야 되네 자되게 나위고야 디디게 내유고야 내일녀야 근데 로디게 지녀야 자샤디게 류녀야로와 제가 되네 인자 원보 주기 주일에 되네게 원보 주기 나주게 원보 주기 권에 파 통고래서 통요도 갑라 안에 통요도 갈려워서는 디기에는 디네 통요도 가르치기 위해서는 디기 누바될 때네 마음을 빼 류심에 대화 해봐지 개봐지고 그래서 제일 온보 주기 줄로 대동이시 개봐지 않으세요 대동은 동방이 또 배 대화지게 제가 디네기 파티 기여도 통요도 갑라 빼 매도 통요도 갑라 매도의 원미기 통요도 빠 류레 빼지 갈 대랑 지금 가위에 셈지게 가위에 셈디기 안 남사 디 라신이 맞아 동방이 또 별로 뭐 동방이 또 어떻게 러지 뭐 기투고 그래서 디기 다디게 다디 최제다 나주 진이 랩셰비기 나주 최제디기 가르치기라나 데니게 왕식의 통원도 갑라 대통원도 통비게 류리아 데라 대화지게 셈레 대화침보지게 대화디기 동방이 또 그래서 그래 동방이 또 러지 데니게 누바디고 누바 요래서 그래 제데라 동방이 또 베기 투에게 제레를 마선 디레서 그러다.
We look here at the blessing of the inner offering and offering substances in these three parts. So we've just looked at essence, and now we can come to the second, which I was saying is maybe activity or benefit, but more, we can rather use the term function. So returning to the text, so continuing from where we read, in essence, wisdom, knowledge, in aspect, inner offerings, and various offering substances. So that's the first of the three divisions, essence. Now we come to the second. As enjoyments of the six senses, they function to generate the special wisdom knowledge of bliss and emptiness. So just to say as an aside, the reason we're covering this now is in the Tibetan, this is now in the second line. So here, we've recognized that the essence of the inner offering and the offering substances is our wisdom realizing emptiness that takes the aspect of the inner offerings and the various offering objects. Now, what is the function or the purpose of doing this? They serve as enjoyments. So enjoyments, it's not a great term, but anyway, it's the objects that our senses, we can maybe say, interact with. And so the objects are the six senses. So the senses of the sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, and consciousness. So these interact with those objects of sight, smell, etc. And then in the next line, as enjoyment. So these are what we have now visualized, right? The offering substances, which has arisen from the various inner offering and offering substances that have arisen from our wisdom realizing emptiness, and they function as objects of our six senses that we interact with or enjoy. And what is the purpose of this function? Is to generate the special wisdom knowledge of bliss and emptiness. So what this means is that when one sees these offering substances or smells or tastes these offering substances, great bliss arises within one, and that consciousness of great bliss then realizes emptiness. That then is the meaning of to generate the special wisdom knowledge of bliss and emptiness. To generate the special wisdom knowledge. So wisdom knowledge of bliss and emptiness, that's fine. So when one sees these offering substances that have arisen from our wisdom realizing emptiness, recognizing that these have arisen from our wisdom realizing emptiness, great bliss is generated, and that great bliss is a consciousness, and that consciousness itself realizes that what is appearing is empty of inherent existence. And in this way, the wisdom of great bliss realizes emptiness. And just to say, what we have here is wisdom knowledge. It really is wisdom knowledge is fine, but it is just wisdom.
Now the Wambo Chökyi Gyaltsen said, "Dambo Wambo Chökyi da, dambo migi Wambo le sheba na the migi tong de sigura." Ngā zo ne me do ning ju wo chi ko migi tong de da migi gyul cha migi gyul ne migi tong ya yu de wa ji za me do de ngā zo migi tong de ka bla ngā zo la sem ne o me do ning ju do sem be ge ga lang la ji de lang la ji ge jo ro ba da yin ne di ngā zo ge de wa zam ma do 이 거 개바 정가 차고 막 이게 동반이 또 두고 말하면서 리네 또 두고 말봐 제가 또 두고 말하면서 대화지 가랑라지 대화지 끼고래 이네 디기 대화디 동반이 또 두고 말하면서야 나 나중에 되디 매도로 세징아도 매도 쉬어로 와당아도 부예기 취재진 되니게 매도디야 나중에 야 상예 라말이야 부용도 갑라 부용도 라미기 파 아니 쟁기 시용도 매도도 시용도 갑라 남사 라말이야 아니 매도디기 통이데 셈이야 가라나 지게도 디기 대화 이기 대화디기 오다리 라시 말도 봐 되니게 매도데 동시간 데니기 닝지오 난거리나 다선 제바선 랑문의 두바사도 요마레 선비게 동방이 도고래 지산 대화디게 동방이 도고래 지산 데니기 도블로데라 대동선 주율로 대동라도 왕보디기 메도드 통도 주율차 통도 데레 대화시키리스 엔 대화디기 안 동방이 도고래스 데니기 도비 이시데라 개버전서 지산 대화 잠마인바 대화 동방이 도비기 대화 이 대회 이시에서 이시 개버전서 그 대화점 말이에요. 대화점 말마저 그 동방이 도고 이제 개발제래서 예버시 나네 작쇼들 야가들에서 우라 개발제다. 다 나는 중에 메도 통해데 가라라 시고마도 대화시키고마도 이게 동방이가 또 두고 말이야. 대화 규말을 찾아야 가지고 대화 규말에 지나다 라마당 이담디게 메도 가서 부여도 메도기 봐 지요도 갑라 그런 중에 람상 룰리아 직sem리아 대화디 만에 어디 라싱이 마주바 동방이 동사이 또 두고래 제산디 데비가 동방이 또 별로데라 대동이 시 개발자에서 제산디 안주 최고 부위의 유디기 데니기 라말이야 최고 부용도 부디 라미 투규래 대동이 시 개발 기투고래 제래다 개발 디레 거 레갈 마소나 제레 뉴발 마소나 디레사 제레 가르에서 디지 최제다 나치디기 제레 디네래
Continuing to look then at the function here, so we see that the offering, in aspect in offerings and various offering objects, as enjoyments of the six senses, they function. So that's part of the function, but then we come to the specific function, the actual function rather, is to generate the special wisdom knowledge of bliss and emptiness. So again, just to say, the translation says wisdom knowledge, but it's just the word for wisdom, or more normally expressed as exalted wisdom. So you could write special exalted wisdom of bliss and emptiness. And then also just to say as an aside, before going on to what Genla said, the word for bliss is also the word for happiness. So in English, we use the two words depending on the context, but it's the same in Tibetan, same word in Tibetan. So now to what Genla said. If we take an illustration of ourselves and our Lama, and both ourselves and our Lama are offered a flower, we will receive that flower, and it will be beautiful, and happiness or bliss will arise in our mind. So here let's just say happiness arises in our mind. This is mere happiness, ordinary happiness. It's really nothing particularly special. And that's all that would happen. For our Lama, though, offered an identical flower, for them, bliss would arise. And not only that, but that consciousness of bliss would recognize that this flower and its beauty are both empty of inherent existence, that they've come about in dependence on causes, parts, and imputation by mind. The beauty of the flower and the flower itself is completely empty of inherent existence. So our Lama can, through the arisal of bliss, through seeing the beautiful flower, that consciousness of bliss realizes emptiness. For us, we'll be happy looking at the pretty flower, but that's it. We may recall that it's empty of inherent existence, but that is a very coarse conceptual understanding, and it certainly is not our consciousness of happiness that is realizing the emptiness of the flower. So this is why it's called, here in our final line, a special wisdom or special exalted wisdom of bliss and emptiness, because this then refers to the particular function of the offering substances and the inner offering. The inner offering and offering substances serves as having a special function of leading to the arisal of great bliss, which itself realizes emptiness.
데니기 동방이 또베 로딩 안가도 곰 야네 야노 곰비기 곰네 소술야 안에 지게 대화세기에 대화디 로 참모체거래 진짜 로 차와 니기 동방이 또 투얘기 용거를 안가서 용거를 대가지고 곰제 동방이 또 되니마 지마 로마 곰면에 로 rakpati paa gaji lo char deyo denige chamo lo char deyo deyo lo chami ngane dewa di ngane tongpa nyi to komya ge du sin pa lo jangdoro je du je jangdoro jige je dewe tongyi to tuba di ngane zule yung go re danga zuge nyamlen jigan zule yung tubo re de sanji banyin na ya 동이 맞대 마도 봐도 되는 대화지기 대화 류시 소리 대화라 다 동이 또 차네 다 동방이 또 별로 된 아주 동바 또 봐이나 동바 당보 또 별로디 동방이 또 별로 락바 차가 동방이 또고 어디네 로디 락바로 체 데는마 야 지기 곰디 망보 곰디다 곰비 림바 망보 여러와 데네 곰비 갑라 데네 소수기 동로 참모디기 차주고 로 참모디게데 진리여데 이기 셰버 로 참모 가나나 예 대화기여데 데네기 대화디야 동이 또야게 탑시여 양 곰지고 곰고르마도 디기 되면서 데네 야네 양도 곰디 데네기 셈ля 니 가나나 기비 가와디기 데네 동방이 또야게 또 두고래 디 곰베기 냠네 나주바 그런지기 또 두고래 당 알아서래다데 니 메로와 메아자다 몽바나서래 대용야기다 디네기 두시나지기 바지 당봉아주 메바지 걸데네 메바지 제바지 삼다 다 곰디가 메바지 곰 안디 메바지 안디지네 안gel리gel리 지나가지고 용야기 당 알아주기 용야기 레월마서나 아주기 탑람리아디 삼단고로도
All of you will have heard teachings on emptiness, and presumably you engage in meditation on emptiness. But not, and whatever understanding though one has come of emptiness, one doesn't give rise to a subtle enough consciousness realizing emptiness for bliss to arise. However, through repeatedly engaging in the meditation on emptiness, and hearing ever more teachings on emptiness, our meditation will deepen, which means our consciousness that is understanding emptiness becomes ever subtler. And then eventually we will come to a coarse realization of emptiness. And that coarse realization of emptiness will lead to the arrival of bliss. And that bliss will be able to, that bliss itself will be able to realize emptiness. So what is missing now is we do not yet have a subtle enough mental consciousness realizing emptiness. To generate that, we need to continue to meditate on emptiness. And eventually we will be able to realize emptiness, generate a mind of bliss, and have that mind of bliss realize emptiness too. So for now, we engage in this meditation on a level of aspiration or imagination, but we can have confidence that through meditating repeatedly over a sustained period, our skill will develop sufficiently where we can do this. Even though it will be on a coarse level, we can though still experience a consciousness of bliss, realizing emptiness.
다데네 가르섬 망용 가르섬 당고래라나 베 망고여바 섬당고래라 제가 살다 바나 남케 勸함체 용수 캡에서 제가다 사차상 사지차상 파 지금 나초다 최제 부역이 나초다 최제디 베 다가 강되어봐 근데 바나 할야 베 데니게 최제 시우여디게 남케게 강캡라 남케게 가제 남가 가제 켜와 있는 디나시 아니 제 최제다 나초다 최제의 부역이 아니 부역이 되네 캡도 여봐디 차사 용수 강화세도 용수 캡에서 차 다데네 나초다 최제메다 사지 동보로 뛰어서 매바자 차사 딱다 용수 캡도 여봐디 삼당고래 제 망고 시우 여봐 삼당고래 제
Starting to look at the start of when we looked at this verse, I mentioned the three outlines of essence, function, and quantity. So we've looked at the first two, essence and then function, and now the third, quantity. So here we start in the middle of our second line. Pervade the reaches of space, earth and sky, spreading out. So again, Genla's going through the order in the Tibetan. And this shows that the offerings that we imagine, they fill the space before us, leaving no free space in the sky before us. Rather, it is filled with various offerings.
And Jensi some yi me chaba kanwa gyuro sida deshi da nangshe dan zedi ge so de ne ge chi Chopa da nangyo Chopa da sangyo Chopa din chue din be ba do chue din be din na ji din nam ga le din yi chaba na jin da de ne ge chue ze da na chue de ne ge dam ze se de jin yi lab she ba so dam be ze dam ze se jin yi lab se be Jensi se de Jensi some yi me chaba se de pa mi ge pa da ya zu be mang bo da Who kept the Yobashi? The new Yoba, some down where said, don't you but that is such a Bana Chazan Gan Yoba, yes, and some down the Chibare. Got a chinilla. Children damzes or damze like do. Damzes or children damzes or dambe, said the bed, Jinny Lamne Shash with dambe, damzes or.
Now the verse concludes, but I'll read the first three lines together. Pure clouds of outer, inner, and secret offerings, and fields of vision pervade the reaches of space, earth, and sky, spreading out inconceivably. So here the meaning is just as we've presented before, that the offerings that one visualizes aren't just one or two or a few before one. Rather, the space before one is filled, completely filled with offerings. One's not holding back in any way. One's imagination isn't limited. All that one can possibly conceive is being conceived and offered. So that's then the meaning here. There, we don't have it doesn't come out in the translation, but there is the meaning in here that these offerings are all being blessed as well.
The Lama Chöpa Yamlin Chia, that Yamlinguni Chevala, nearly a Jehovah, Jehovah, Chasan, the Kuno, Jamdro Sim, Casora, Nehanchi, Chevata, they give you Sata, Jamdro Che, the Neankuno, Chanchu Sim, the singular Saji Chin Love, then Chopuyaki, Nacho, Zedi, Chin Love, Chasan, Masona, Chasan Sasarada. That in Ma, that's how we share down on Zugita, that you know to give. 错杀也经常做全部不是与错性那么这个呀错性来那样做错不是个全部不是个与的那么他的说一旦这个怕很少特别的效果错性少特别些但是嘛我当年们前我是的效果的
A translator made one mistake right at the outset. We now only come to the conclusion of the preliminary. So I mentioned the preliminary to the main practice was refuge and bodhicitta. That was my error. It includes now also the blessing of the inner offering and offering substances. So these first 8 verses constitute the preliminary to the core of the practice. And right at the outset of the core of the practice, one generates a merit field, or to express that differently, one generates a field of holy beings with one's Lama at the center, upon which, or in relation to which, vast stores of merit will be accumulated.
Lama Lama and so Ningalia, Lama Satavia, Suzuki Dungi Namkalia, Lama Satavia, the Niki Sataptanti, the Jimba chicken 소수기 감나 매바다 되네게 라메기 안에 담가다 튠비 톤에 되네 살답다 먹은 거와 지난 라마 살답다 되래 안에 지올라 살답다 안에 닝가라 살답다 되네 랑기 둥이 남가 살답지 검다 되네기 라마 살답다 되래 살답세기 네들야 두수세 용고를 해지래
Here, the visualization can be done in according to one's wish. Either one can visualize the merit field before one, above one, or at one's heart.
Lama sio lama. Chikbaro lama de lama shusa de lama chasang korwa de lama ke kor lami singam da chasan satab kartab na lami shukti da lama da dene khordan kar satab ne satab sege kawa satab gugre lamna jiola satab ya yores ningala satab komya yores dunyi namgala satab komya yores ma inji miji jiwo janjang gomgore se di mare se orda lami satab sege ne delia kar yores ne jiola satab komya yores dunyi namgala satab komya yores ningala satab komya yores di ko lami ki dam가다 되네게 라미기 도스제 dam가다 소수게 감나 매바 튠비기 되네게 다 되네게 고미야기 미라미라 용고를 해제 된지 랍사레다 예 나디 사다비게 녀려야 다 사답세가 아주 다디디 사답세디 다 디네기 유베나네 가와 사답고레세네 둥이 남칼이야 사답 고레세 아주 다디 라메 쳬비게 도스냠면 제뒤 갑라 아주 사답타데다 디기 아주 그 라미게 손다데라 다 둥이 남칼에 사답이야 레체네
Of those three possibilities, the Lama Chöpa presents the visualization as before oneself. But if one has a particular inclination, or one has received specific spiritual instructions from one's Lama, then one can visualize one's Lama and the merit field, if not before one, then on the crown of one's head or at one's heart.
사답디 갈래야 사답게 사제루치 사제 당보 사제 삼당구로와 델리아 사제 삼다 되냐 라마디게 슈리스요 고로와 다 당보 사제 삼다 야 동반이 삼당고 녀려야 동반이 공부를 다 동이 당아주 되니게 냠리 동반이데 동바지 제체 뭐 차거로와 되는 자디 그래서 다 동반이 삼다 당보 동반이 공부를 해서 다 동반이 공네 식들리도와 대동 예르메 살면 양보 공산 추진 특별 의유시데 디 사지디레다 고 부dun이 남과라 사지 삼다디디 지산데 델야 대동 예르메 살아야 공산 추진 특별 의유시 공산 추진데도 배지게 만줄야 사치디게 배 마세 야고시 올다가지 지게 매도하다 두배다 되네게 최세되는 빠도 매바 삼기미게 봐 예디베게다 빠도 매바 예 군사 전유선바 군도 상배기 몰람을 중화 나시 최비 진세의 진칙바스 등도 바르게 남가라 배 까르팅이 진지 치치도 봐지 나신 직제 왜 되네게 예디 봐지 될야 안에 매도다 두배다 마메다 최절라서 받아 삼기미게 림보치 빠도 매바 예디 봐지 네 시고를 단달라 내 지산 당보디 여바질 당보 가라 삼당고라서 나 동반이 삼당고래지 지산 소소 동반이 삼당지 소수게 동반이 곰 비게 다 대동아 이시라기도 하다 대동아시도 양 대화세데 매니기 저기 로 동반이도 로 rak과만이 로 참어서 왔다 이기 로 참어 동반이 또 비게 류리아 이기 제바 로 참어 대위기 대화치기 대화디게 동반이 또로 동반이 또 되니게 동반이 또 비고 로디 동바다 동반이 또 로디 안에 남바로스다 되니게 찡기 남바다 되니게 찡치도 바네 바나리아 안델리아 안지가 사시다 안지게 매도다 빵다 초다 되니게 최제다 배 빠도 매바스 이 여바 도시네 삼당고래지래
When one embarks on the meditation of the one's Lama and the merit field, or the visualization of one's Lama and the merit field, one first the first part that one will generate in the visualization is that of the magnificent environment wherein the Lama and the merit field is to be found. And before one engages in the generation of this visualization, the starting point is to meditate on emptiness. So here again, as we have already several times before, one meditates on emptiness, and the wisdom that realizes emptiness is the foundation for this part of the practice too. So hopefully this also now serves to emphasize the great importance of meditating on emptiness, that at so many different parts of the practice, it is explicitly the foundation. Other parts, it will implicitly be so. But here, it's explicitly so. So one meditates on emptiness, generating once again great bliss through the realization of emptiness. Or as we have in our first line, in the vast space of indivisible bliss and void amidst billowing clouds. So indivisible bliss and void refers to the wisdom of bliss, which is a subtle wisdom of bliss that is realizing emptiness, and this is a mind far subtler than we can utilize at this stage in our meditation, that is experiencing bliss and then is realizing emptiness. So this is what we have referred to before in the preceding verse. So here we have this wisdom of this subtle mind of bliss that is realizing emptiness. And from that consciousness that is realizing emptiness, we see the rest of the line. In the vast space of indivisible bliss and emptiness, amidst billowing clouds of Samantabhadra offerings. So that's then the first line in the Tibetan. And so Samantabhadra offerings refers to the style of offerings as expressed by the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra in his King of Prayers, where there are billowing clouds of offerings filling up the sky before one or space before one. So this then is similar or has a connection to what we covered in the previous verse. So that is the meaning though of Samantabhadra offerings. Vast and extensive offerings like thick clouds. We have these I call it Columbus clouds, something like this. It's very high clouds. It is like that, but with offerings filling up space.
대화 동방이 또 예르메 세드 데니기 유전 대화대다 유 동방이들라 뭐 예르메 예르메스 유다 유 동방이 되다 유전 동방이 대화 동방이 또 베니디 뭐 예르메레스로 대동 예르메 세디시고래.
What is the meaning of indivisible in bliss and void? So here we can look at it like this. Bliss and emptiness, let's just use what we usually utilize, bliss and emptiness. This refers to the consciousness. So that is the object possessor or the consciousness. And so bliss and the wisdom realizing emptiness are the consciousness or object possessor, and the object that they possess is that of emptiness. So again, bliss and emptiness, that consciousness is realizing its object, namely emptiness. And here, the object and the object possessor, the consciousness and what the consciousness is realizing, are indivisible. So that is the meaning then of the term indivisible. It refers to the object possessor, in other words the consciousness, and what that consciousness is realizing, the object, namely emptiness. Bliss and emptiness, and bliss and the wisdom realizing emptiness, and emptiness being indivisible.
Salam yangba sido. Salam yangba. Salam yangba sede se semde denigi tongba de dongge yishe di Nuba Chimbo Sio, the Nuba Yangbas and the Jachimbo Gora, that the Delia Nuba Chimbo says, Nuba Chimbo. And the Halam said, Ha, Sanjo Gopan Toba, Sanjo Gopan, Toba Chipik, Lam, Nuba Chimbo, Jachimbo, Nuba Chimbo is or that Halam Yangba said. Ha said, Ya, Sanjo Gopan, Dorichanki, Yawadisha, Gopan the Sha, Di Lam, Di Toba Chipik, Lam Yangbas and Nuba Chimbodis. Just not the Nigi. Deve Tonyu to be shady, call Nuba Ganis Yores and Sanji Goban to be lam, call Sanjo Goban Tobaji, Yamlinji, lam dires, Sanjo Goban Tobaji, lam dires, Chazan di Nuba di Bemas in Nuba Chembures or Sanjo Goban Tobaji, lam Nuba Cabajan, yes, at Gugorda, Halam Yamba says.
The first line then, in the Tibetan, it goes in this sequence. We have bliss, emptiness, indivisible. So that then we've now looked at and what it means. Thereafter we come to, again going in the order of the Tibetan, the word we have as space and vast, or in the vast. So that's the order of the Tibetan. So we start with bliss and emptiness, indivisible. So that we've looked at, indivisible, bliss and emptiness. Thereafter, the word comes for in the vast space. So the meaning here can understand, the one works well for English. It means having great power or great strength. So the consciousness of indivisible bliss and emptiness, indivisible bliss and the wisdom realizing emptiness, and its object, emptiness, is likened to vast space in that it has incredible strength or power. The second way to understand vast space is through the literal Tibetan. So the word that is translated as space, it's not mistaken, that is a translation. The literal translation would be pathway to deity. It's a pathway, or it's hla, lam. So hla, we can understand as deity, and lam being the path to it, as in lam rim, stages of the path. So what that's then the second way that we can understand the word space, which is literally pathway of the deity or to the deity, means the pathway to Buddhahood. So here the deity we can understand as being the state of a Buddha or Buddhahood. And what is the path of the deity? It's the word immediately that came before, or the path towards Buddhahood. It is the indivisible bliss and emptiness. So that's the second meaning. The first meaning was that the indivisible bliss and emptiness is of great strength and power. The second meaning is the indivisible bliss and emptiness is the pathway or the path to practice to achieve the state of Buddhahood.
Devege yigi sheba chamo dewashi langi dewadigi dongbang dobe lodi sanje gobang tober jibe lamdi dire so da dinyam so lembale dine sanje gobang tobo gores jisande de don yeme hala yamba se de denigi sanje gobang tober jibe lam nuba chen jendi and dewe donyu dobe shi dire nam de ngone de ba chila da namba kunsa chutin tikbi Consecration Ritual Tibetan number di ngodi dire number the garrison Chopa Puja Consecration Tibetan doa Consecration Kundu Sambe Chinese Kundu Puja Chopa Chopa Puja yu sashi yangba and ji medo da medo da dubue da and chicken Rinpoche dinigi captive bege sashi is or tibu is it Tingi Tiba Nashin Denigi captive Sajiti, number Deniki Sajik Mochi, number Denishi in Bachila, Modi, David don't you to be shitty, yes or that. The Yishebana Jibare, Nashi love the Chesing Lavana Jibare, more David Tombato, we don't you to be she in Bachila, Manzumigi, Toya de la Carsone Sashi, and the Medoda, Benedict Medoda, Gio, Chick, Dubuel also, and the Chuda. 저게 ninjiwo shu yeden zebi ranshinje inbaji deniji rese ora namba deniji yobadi samdam goreje re so dunyi namgadliya.
So first of all, then recap just what has been mentioned. So the pathway to practice to achieve the state of Buddhahood, so that's a second meaning to the word space, that the pathway to achieve the state of Buddhahood is of great power, which is the meaning of vast, and that which is to be practiced is bliss and the indivisible bliss and emptiness. So the emptiness being the object, being indivisible from the realizing consciousnesses of bliss and the wisdom that is realizing emptiness. So that is the path of great power to practice to achieve Buddhahood. That is the meaning then of the first half of the sentence, in the vast space of indivisible bliss and void. Then the second half of the Tibetan first line is amidst billowing clouds of Samantabhadra offerings. That then is, we can understand in the same way as we understood offerings in the previous verse, which these billowing clouds of Samantabhadra offerings have as their nature the wisdom of great bliss realizing emptiness, and it takes the aspects of billowing clouds of Samantabhadra offerings, or vast amounts of Samantabhadra offerings. So the offerings, what appears to one as offerings, has as, what appears in the aspect of offerings, has as its nature the a great bliss and wisdom realizing emptiness.
Dene da dondala pene gyachimbu shuju dene ge sajil mason dene gyachimbu shuju ba samda reche mode tongma to dewe tongba to bi shi yimba jela namba de sajibe yahu ninjiwo chasan tunge chasan shuyu de gyachimbu shuju ba samda de donda de namba de dene samda je.
And the way, the aspect that this visualization should take to one should be vast and expansive and of immense beauty.
Ora, nadine deshasana, anzu ji tuora yuna dana digore. Da dondala anzu denige samdana diungro kasang anzu gi jabyu sa tab telya jamro che sa da samdai du ji chanzao shu zhe ge nya duo ji mewa ji liao so so gi yore se mewa ra ji ji until ya di jin da da se kubara shiro samsan de jenso ra de nyambaro shin sa samsan jenso sa.
In terms of covering text, we'll stop there. Now I'll just cover a few points, and then you can ask some questions if you have. So one point I want to start with is something we covered last week and we've touched on this week, is that this practice is being, for ourselves, is being done on the level of aspiration or imagination. And that may well lead to some doubts arising for us, because we can understand the purpose and the benefit of refuge and bodhicitta. But there are other aspects here which are clearly being done on the level of imagination. And then we can have some doubts as, should one bother, is there any point in doing so?
Lama then Geshe na Yahweh share Chita, and Lubinum Guna Yahweh Mata Ganjoma Jada Jigmarwa, Carson Company Millet Zisajero, Zigorwa. Dina Shang to get Yawar Mature, which are doing the Yovana, the Garams doing the Ledevena, Nanzuki Kishita Marashia, Ganjoma Jigmarwa, Chisan Kishevana, Yahweh share, Long Lugin Gutambana, Yahweh share, Undusine Yahweh Carson, Penny Zisajorva, the Yahweh. 당하도 두스 검냠네 제데 가야 산마다 좀 지쳐 비세디 수수기 지세로지 메로와 디디 안 저기 약보 용도 말 소소 지세도 예나 소소 약보 용고로 봐 디니 지사데 지구 수세죠 봐 본부 첨부 주에나 될 지구 수고로 봐 지구 수네 어당에 계시 약보 마시나 약보 말선 삽습 지고로 봐 겨울음지 든디 수나 겨울음지 지구 수지 안 저기 계시 독자 마셔봐다 간다 류기 넘기 독자 강 야야 지구로 봐 데로 지구로 봐 지난 지세 지구 수세 지여봐나 나 저기 계주 냠내데 야갈리 두고 초보 푸야데 야갈리 두고 데니 인장 만주기 겹유데 사답이야 답 고여베 김세디 디르와 겹유 사답네 데니 만줄이야 데니기 여반자 델리아 사답시베 델리 여반자 델리아 지구 수야다 초푸야다 셈쇼든 마소나 야가 용고베 이디 인장 저기 겹유 사답 고여베 김세로 디레
To address then there's the visualization that we've been starting to build here. Because again, one may wonder, what is the point of imagining this? I'm just sitting in my home, in my room, and I'm visualizing there's something quite beautiful and expansive before me. But what is the purpose of this? Because it is only on the level of imagination. Well, to maybe understand it better, we could think of if we say had the opportunity to meet the Prime Minister, and we were particularly excited because we were trying to achieve something meaningful, and we know the Prime Minister has power and influence and can make things happen. So knowing that, we would prepare well for this meeting. We wouldn't go in there and think, what was I going to say? What were the key points? And etc. We would be prepared well. Similarly, if we had the opportunity to have a personal audience with His Holiness, we would be not only excited at that opportunity, but we'd prepare well. We'd think carefully about the questions we were going to ask. We'd also think carefully of how to act and behave, because this is an opportunity quite unlike anything that we experience ordinarily. It's not like when we hang out with our friends and we talk about the Dharma, or we hang out with our friends and we talk about our projects and how we'd like them to work out well. These two illustrations of either meeting the Prime Minister or His Holiness are quite extraordinary and are to be utilized well. So similarly, for the purpose of this practice, which has as its goal Buddhahood, one is preparing the environment in the most detailed way to bring about the most perfect of results.
자기 되네 동네 쇠셔기셔와 델레 쇠제게질이 간지 예쁘니 가르만다요 파야 가르사요 선배 삼밀로와 요시게 브라와.
It is quite possible you've had the same or similar doubt in relation to making offerings, say on the shrine here or in your own homes. You're putting out these offerings before statues, but they're just made of metal. So it may seem really strange to put out offerings before this metal image.
Desandi kupada di kundra dikede anazo yagare di kundra yagare sang anazo yagire wada anazo pazo to kesha de lagala kundra de shashama de kundra de lagala aska me kesha gaimendo dene anazo delia dene Chopa pisa de mitiki shandage 통요 de kala neso de yakura ha mogwana mitiki de kupa lemba shudu de nege koronzo seche delia pe zachimu shuju chopa de me de didise lenda kupa shudu samge dengirwa.
Because from one perspective, one can look at these metal images, metal and perhaps clay images, and think to oneself, I'm superior to these. I at least can go about the world and do various things and say various things. Between these images and myself, surely as a human being, I'm superior. And another thought that may well arise is that if one's making offerings and a stranger were to walk in, one may be a little bit embarrassed, thinking, I wonder if they're laughing inside at me, or I wonder if they're criticizing me, because with what I'm doing, I know seems a little strange.
Just 니 괜찮아시 도와대요. 삼단데 되네게 용서를 와대. 다 don다라 덴지싱한 쪽이 군다들이야 초피지 군다데 자심을 휴지거를 배세네. 다돈 원행한 주디 말해다. 민고로는 군다라고 그래. 저부래서 그래. 지단 저부인 상원에 말해라고 그래. 그 치디 그 벽에 치디를 군다라디 그 저부래서 그래. 저부랍는 거에 말해서 그래. 근데 더지 저부래라네 더지 말해. 근데 그 저부래마도 그 말해라 그래. 그래서 델레 군다라도 그 저부래마도 뭐네 말해서지. don다 치디 치코로나야 군다라디 디 저부래마도 뭐네 많이 받았어. 뭐네 많이 받고 고투고 그래.
Such thoughts aren't completely surprising in that from an ordinary worldly way of thinking, this would probably be quite appropriate. But from the Dharma perspective, it's a little different. So for example, the Tibetan word for statue is literally similar to the body, kundra. So for example, if we were to say, oh, he is similar to Dorje, you'd know it's not Dorje, but in some way is similar to him. So similarly with the statue, that the word for statue is similar to, and then it's the honorific word for body.
제가 군자 시도 구세디 산제 구르래 산제 구체 다른 안주디 쇠셔버디 산제 구디 저부셔래 시가 저부셔라 될 저부셔래 제가 당 안주 최고 부여디 니 저부치데 데니기 안주 쇠셔버 구 저부치 될 미제 산제세데 데니시 요래 삼제 대바 술지가 산제 지금 마도 니 구자 쇠셔 구자 될 지고 말다 지와 당 안주 대바 원내 술리고 산제 코로나 지고 제가 산제 구세디 냐마 산제세 디나시 지요래 삼비게 니 구델 때 안주 쇠셔 군자 될 때 니기 진제네 안주 산제래 대바체 데니 초페디게 산제를 풀고 얼마도 데니 쇠셔규기 지게 디라삼다데 잠다 풀고 말 데라삼데 콜야 풀고 삼고 말와 당한저 가르 풀고 삼고라서네 산제세지 데니 시요데 셈비고 구딜레 미제 대기 겐제네 산제리 일라데 산제 일라데 데니 제산 초보메도 부에다 초부에들 산제레 냐마 산제세 구디니 시요랑 산제를 풀고 했으면 산제를 풀고 그랬어 제상아도 겐디 아줄려 구다디게 겐제 근데라 아니 아주 산제 지수 tembe다네 아니 초부에다 산제를 풀고 그랬지.
So the Tibetan word for statue, kunye. So ku is the honorific word for a body, and here would refer specifically to the body of a Buddha or the Buddha. And with the understand, and then the second syllable, so that was the first ku, and then dra. This is means similar to. So when one looks at this at a statue, for example, or at a tanka, knowing that this is similar. It takes the similar form or shape or color to the actual Buddha, then this can serve as a basis upon this. So the statue or the tanka serves as a basis upon which, or independence upon which, the faith of confidence arises. And when this faith arises within us, we have now called to mind the Buddha. And independence on the statue, we have recalled or we've remembered the Buddha. And with now seeing the Buddha, the statue, as being like the Buddha, as serving a particular role, we make offerings, as if the Buddha were physically present before us.
ramneche du ane deri ku dene chinala ya sangye del ya peje sangye de la shuro che se nga zu ramneche sha je ro je dene za tang an ju gi phu du kabla kundra le chö phu du kabla kundra de temba sangye chomne sangye se dene chi ya sambe dene chi yo re sambe sangye ji su tembe thone sangye dina le shu yo re samje me ba sangye de ku dina lo shu yo re samje me ba chin phu go da ga je be na han ju gi de ro bene Bumbaisinaria ane jike muida se do hashi lushane chilon dana de Bumbai 통고 마도 dine ane se 통고 말와 이내 당한주 디나 se lushaba 하고 원자 만주기 제 자치모 휴제 다버제디 가르치는 자chen 다고 저것은 치료기 분바디 자chen 모래선 다고 저거 말봐 나로를 세치 요래 디 자chen 무슈리 디 나로 요래 삼제 델야 다고 슈 저거로 봐 디나시 먼저 꾸델야 아니 상기기 난 송푸제 상기 델 슈로체 진납시 샤와자 디구나 디나로야 상기 슈요래 삼제 구코랑 상기 군대의 상기를 삼단거 말도 디나로라 상기 슈요래 상지 몇바치 상기를 피고래 제래 세상 최고부에 되니게 가서 피고래
And furthermore, the statues that one is about to make offerings to, these aren't just mere shells that have been crafted very well so as to be pleasing to the eye and look like the actual Buddha. They have also been filled with particular mantras and particular substances, and thereafter they have been consecrated. And in the consecration ritual, many things are recited, including heartfelt requests that the omniscient Buddha is aware of this consecration and the requests being made in the consecration and to enter and abide within this object. And thereafter, this now consecrated statue is transformed in terms of how we relate to it because of having been well constructed, filled in the appropriate manner, and then consecrated, whereby the Buddhas were implored to enter and abide in this statue. This statue then is suitable to serve as a basis for making offerings to, as if it were the Buddha in person or in flesh and blood. So another illustration would be, if you have just a regular container before us here, we won't pay it much attention. But if someone knows that within that regular container there are things of great value, perhaps jewels stored inside, whilst it will look very ordinary from the outside, the person who knows the value that it contains within will relate to it very differently. So similarly, when one understands that these Buddha images here, and the ones in your home, they've been created with care, filled in the appropriate manner, and then consecrated by a Lama through the appropriate ritual, where they implored the Lama, the Buddha, to enter and abide in this image, thereby transforming it into something that is merely looks like the body of a Buddha, into something that is suitable to be considered like the body of the Buddha. So then when one is making offerings to the Buddha's image, whether it's a statue or a tanka, one can relate to it as if it is like a Buddha, in that seeing it as having the power or the potency of a Buddha. And that makes it as suitable as a basis for making offerings to. And it's the same with the visualization. So now we're still just constructing it, but later we come to verses maybe 15 and 16, and this is the invocation. So the invocation serves the same purpose as the invocation to the visualization serves the same purpose as the consecration ritual does to a statue or tanka, where one is imploring the Buddhas to come and abide either in the statues or here in one's visualization. Thereafter, one can have confidence because of the quality of one's visualization and the sincerity of one's supplication, that now this isn't a mere imagined a Buddha abode before one, but we have the holy beings actually before us because they have responded to our sincere request.
Andi najin jibari do angan zo nyama mi keta chimbo shu chebe ne de sugi da de kundra shan sha yo ku yo ro wa de ne da jin ne de ya da de andi nyama gi mi di ki de su jing yo ro wa ma do ku ho ro de shu re keta chimbo jing yo ma ro di na jin a zo ta ru pa ma da bu ta ru de wa ne par de da jin ne bu gi gi pa mi par da jin pa ma jing yo re an pa mi gi bu par da je 부고 댕겨를 마도 빠르게 댕겨는 빠르게 게디나 여여 바로 와서 빠르 거랑 심당고 빠르게라 낀제네 소소 부고 된다 아마데 지바라 두세네 삼단다 지바라 단다 닝봉에 갈라고 선당 저기 지 군다다 디지 꾸디게 나랑서 쇠교래 데네칠이야 최고 부고를 베세네 디자 마레스 지자 데네 인다도 교슈차로 도다 신도 최고부대 가고 싶으면 최고부대 마레스 지상 안 저기 군다의 처부이세디 코로나 쇠셔죠 코로나 자침보레선 부고 말레스 대쇠는 디더부지요 상예세 디더부지요레스는 상이 디기 겐지다 상이 지수 전제 처부 부고레스 안티고 디날이야 진길랍제 상이 디나도 슈유에서 좀 해봐제제 안델이야 상이를 처부 부고르마도 아니 군다 코로나데 자침부 슈제제 델레 처부 부게 처부유 디안 저기 디 말에서 데 하고 거야 데다 닝벌 디레다 이 마치미 가시게다 주도 어다 쇠 코로서 쇠샤시 델야 자지면 디국바르시 처부핀데 지다가 세도 왔으면 베게 삼시루와 제사 삼당한 진이체베니 디 말에 만주기 디기 겐제네 상계 제수제 아니 디 상계들 슈유 집에 상용을 처부고래 마도 군다 코로나 쇠샤게 되가서 상계를 쓰고 말이야 제래
Think about it, actually in our society we have similar objects that perform such a purpose. For example, there are statues in town. And if you walk in the park and there's a statue, or before a building and there's a statue, or if you go to a gallery and you see a portrait of someone, you'll, from seeing the shape, you'll recall the person, or reading the sign underneath, you'll know who it is. And then you've called them to mind. And maybe if you're with someone, you'll talk about why they're being represented, what they did to deserve such an honor. And in this way, one calls to mind this former famous person and discusses their good deeds. And on a more personal level, we aren't always with our loved ones, but we carry around their photos. And by looking at a photograph of a child or a parent, immediately they call to mind, a warm feeling arises within oneself, remembering their qualities. So these illustrations from daily life are not that dissimilar from the purpose of or the role that statues in our home or here in the shrine play. They fulfill the role of being a physical representative of the Buddha before us. So this really is the essential meaning of the purpose of either doing a visualization and also of making offerings before a Buddha image. It's through the varying stages of having a constructed visualization or statue that is then consecrated or in the particular way, or the days the Buddhas are invoked, and then thereby one has confidence as if the physical Buddhas were before oneself. We have this physical representation, which is this kundra, similar to the body of the Buddha before us. And now we can make offerings in a way as if we were doing it to the Buddha himself in person. And in this way, the offerings can be performed in a very personal and intimate level. Now, not just on a level of imagination or make-believe, but one can do so with the confidence that one is communicating with the omniscient wisdom of the Buddha. So this is good to know, because with this understanding, your own practice will create far more merit, and also when you meet people and they have doubts and it seems a little bit strange, then one can hopefully explain it to them in a way that makes sense. So it's a little late, but if you have some questions, then feel free to ask. Then thank you very much.